welcome to another episode of On the Way Home. I am Michael Braithwaite from Blue Door, one of your hosts, and as always, I am joined by the fantastical Stefania from CAEH. Steph, how are you doing?
I'm good. I love that my weekly affirmations just grow in the word use that you search for. So I really enjoy fantastical. That's great.
Did I even use that right? I don't know.
Sure. How are you doing?
Good. Lots of stuff happening at Blue Door. Many of the things we covered on this podcast. So we're looking at things like community land trusts, and we're using some of those municipal tools that have been suggested through different podcasts. So very busy times as always. And I know, speaking of busy, and that really loops in today's guest and what you're doing, you're very busy right now.
Yeah, so we are just in the throes of planning for the 2021 National Conference on Ending Homelessness, which is of course virtual this year, but the work that doesn't change the amount of work that goes into it, and care and love and attention and all those things, which of course is happening next week, November 3rd to 4th. And I guess that just kind of, I'll just roll into introducing our guest, who also just kind of happens to be my boss. So, just leading into the conference. So, yeah, I'd love to introduce Tim Richter. He's the founder, president, and CEO of the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. The CH leads a national movement of individuals, organizations, and communities working together to end homelessness in Canada. It's, just in the name. Since founding the CH back in 2012, he has hosted the annual National Conference on Ending Homelessness pretty much since then, and including this year's first ever virtual conference. So Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, I didn't get my fantastical boss in there. No.
My fantastical boss, Tim Richter.
There you go.
There you are.
Perfect. Well, welcome, Tim. We've started a new question just with all guests on the show, and it really is around home. And so what we want to know, Tim, is what does home mean to you?
Well, I'm going to steal a line I heard from Jesse Thistle, and he said, "A home is love." And I think, yeah, that's the best way to put it. I can't think of anything better, and I'm not going to try and improve it. I think a home is love. It's where you belong. It's where your people are. It's where you could be yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been really lovely asking that question for the last, I guess, couple weeks now, and it's lovely the variations that we hear, and I love Jesse Thistle's definition of home. So as I mentioned, you and I are working away on the conference. It's amazing we even made time for this podcast. But, I just wanted to bring up the fact that, we've done, how many conferences is it now? Was it 9, 10, 11?
It's every year minus one since 2012.
I think it's around 8 then, I think.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to bring up why we decided, or you decided, we collectively decided to postpone CH20 and make this conference virtual.
Well, I think we had to postpone CH20 because we were in the midst of the pandemic, and it just didn't at that point for 20. We just didn't know how the pandemic was going to play out. We didn't have vaccination, so it just wasn't going to be safe for us to get together. And for 21, that when we had to make these decisions almost a year ago. A little less than a year ago, it still wasn't clear that it could be done safely. And as you guys know, our sector's just taken a heck of a beating over the last 20 months. And so the people who would attend the conference might not have been able to anyway. And so, we thought, well, let's find a way for us to get together one way or the other. It ain't going to be perfect, but let's try and gather the movement again. And at least spend some time in the form that we can, and hopefully next year get back together in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it turns out in the end that it was the right call to make now that we're, less than a week away from it. I think it's definitely makes me feel better that at least there's that opportunity to still collect. So other than going virtual, what can folks expect at this year's conference?
Well, every year we try and make the program a little bit better, try and improve on previous conferences, try and reflect kind of the current state of the movement and ending homelessness in the country. And we try to make the conference as we like to say, the place where you can get inspiration, information, tools, and training you need to end homelessness, so people can come get the things they need and start putting them to work in their communities. And so this year, we've made a few improvements and additions and testing a few things in the program. For example, we've, instead of integrating lived experience across the different streams, we've created a dedicated stream for people with lived experience, which is essential for ending homelessness. We wanted to start thinking about what do equitable homeless systems look like, and begin to think about how we better address, reconciliation, diversity, equity, and inclusion in homeless systems. We have some new content on pandemic response, and we're also adding a stream on unique populations, so folks that may not fit in one of the other streams. But we're still going to have some great content from our partners and ourselves. Again, this year we're joined by the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness, Away Home Canada, the Women's National Housing and Homelessness Network, Canadian Network for Health and Housing of People Experiencing Homelessness, and others. And I think we've pulled together a pretty sharp program.
No doubt. As a participant in many of the conferences in the past, you hit on everything there. We leave inspired, connecting with different people across, not just across Canada, but from around the world, and going virtual even opens up those opportunities even more for people who may not have been able to go in the past. We get to connect with all those people at the conference, many who I'd say are heroes. And on that theme, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the Pandemic Heroes Contest that CAH is putting on. I've also heard that the deadline was extended until November 2nd.
Yeah, well, so this comes back to the point, I just made. Over the last 20 months, the sector has just absolutely taken, a beating. And we think a lot about our doctors and nurses, first responders, essential workers. And I don't think that we've really appreciated what frontline workers and others in the homeless system have done over the last year, and the toll that it's taking. There was a new study out of the CAMH, Center for Addiction and Mental Health, about the state of health and mental health for frontline workers, and over 80% of frontline workers in the study reported declines in their mental health. 40% reported post-traumatic stress and other indicators of burnout and stress, and really worrying trends. And if you think about the folks at Blue Door, my team, the others that are working in the sector who have just gone, not only has their work become much more complicated, but they've taken on pretty incredible risk. If you think about a shelter worker that has to go to work and care for people who are extraordinarily vulnerable, but then this is before a vaccine, not knowing whether or not they might catch it, bring it back to their families, and worrying about all of that. It's been really remarkable. And so the flip is, we wanted to celebrate people. We want people to see what frontline workers in the housing and homelessness world have done. And there's been some really, really remarkable things, and we extended the deadline in part to make sure we can get as many of these videos and testimonials in as possible. So really, this is like a love note to the homeless sector. I want people to understand that their service, their sacrifice, the risk they've taken, the burden they've carried has been is seen and understood. So we're collecting short videos. We want to share those videos, tell those stories on our website, on social media, and if there are people at the conference, we'll see them there as kind of a love letter to the sector and a thank you.
That is amazing. Yeah, in our sector, I know the folks at Blue Door and all our partners across the country, everyone working it, we have a tough time saying no because lives depend on it. But that does take its toll, and it's the least we could do is recognize them. So hopefully people will send in these videos, recognize these heroes as they deserve to be recognized. Every time you have a conference, one of the takeaways for me is you always have incredible keynote speakers. And this year you have Dr. Andrew Bazari, who's been on this podcast, and he was fantastic, and journalist Tanya Talega. Can you talk to us a little bit about what goes into the process of picking a keynote? And what can you tell us about these two special folks?
Well, I'd love to tell you there's a real science to it. I think there's a bit more art than science in this. But when we think about picking our keynotes, we're looking for where can we maybe push the envelope a little bit? Where do we highlight important topics? Who are people that folks in our sector really want to hear from? And this time was no different. Dr. Bazari, I'll call him a fan favorite. Steph knows what I mean. I think he's a bit of a fan favorite among people in the homeless system, and he's a real inspiration for the work he's done in the homeless system, but just how effective he is as an advocate, right? And just how passionate he is about social justice. And you heard that on your podcast, and I think I'm hoping he's going to reflect back to folks in the sector again, how their sacrifices made a difference, and how as a sector we have to speak up for those we serve, right? Because they don't have voices of their own. They do have voices of them, but they aren't heard, right? And so we have to help carry their voice. And he's terrific about that, and a fan favorite. Tanya Talaga I read her book Seven Fallen Feathers a little while ago, and reconciliation, decolonization, and really understanding that has been something that the Alliance has been wanting to do consistently through our conferences. We've had others, like Pam Palmander, Cindy Blackstock, Grand Chief Littlechild, and others who have really helped us understand the impact of colonization and residential schools, and helping us articulate and understand a path forward on reconciliation. And she's one of these, she's a warrior, I think, like Pam and like our others, and just a huge inspiration, and super, super smart. And I think folks are going to love what she has to say. Well, so they might find it a little uncomfortable what she has to say, but I think it's stuff that we know we have to hear. And she's going to be terrific.
I think so, and I think it's been sort of a year of that for many of us with that discomfort, but I think it always leads to a better place. So today, when the podcast drops, which is October 28th, this is the last day folks can register for CH21. So I strongly encourage anyone currently listening to continue listening, open up a tab, go to our website, conference.ch.ca, and register for next week's conference. So other than that, because I feel like we've done a good job promoting it, other than the conference, what is the Alliance working on right now, Tim, that you're really excited to share or talk about?
Well, you might have seen boat housing behind me.
What's that?
What's that? Yeah. Well, yes, Steph, do tell. Well, I think there's a lot of things going on. Like we now work. We work with over 70 cities around the country, and there's a lot of really great stuff happening on the ground. The thing that I'm most excited about is seeing how communities are continuing to make progress on chronic and veteran homelessness. I expect you're going to start to see reductions, more communities talking about reductions, those communities that have achieved reductions, achieving deeper reductions, and those others closing in on functional zero. So continuing to support those communities is really exciting. We're looking again at, we've got a new government, I guess you call it a new government, it's the same government, but new, I guess. Anyway, in place, and we're going to be working hard. This podcast is dropping on the 28th, and so we'll know who the minister is, and be in touch with them, and really working hard now to advance the 6 points that Vote Housing has promoted and pushed for over the summer, and really importantly talking about how we are going to, how the government is going to implement their commitment to ending chronic homelessness. And so a big part of what the Alliance does is lobby the federal government in order to get resources to communities to get the job done. But we're seeing some really exciting progress across the country. There's lots of other things, but I think in particular I'm really interested in as a sector, digging into what is an equitable homeless system. How do we address decolonization and reconciliation, and how do we work with Indigenous partners to do that the right way? So you can expect the Alliance to be leading into more of that stuff, certainly very soon.
Very exciting, and so glad. I mean, the work you did for Vote Housing was, and in leading that throughout the country, was just incredible. We saw it at the beginning. It may not have been on people's radars, but by near the end of the election, it was one of the top issues, and keeping that momentum going moving forward. I mean, I'm going to borrow the United Way, and the GTA had as their tagline was unignorable, and I think that's what you've made housing. You can't ignore this anymore. People see the urgency, they see the issue, and CAEH was leading that charge and really brought people together around that. So nice to see that that is going to continue. We've talked about it. It's been a very, very challenging couple of years due to the pandemic. It's always challenging in this sector, let's be honest. And the people, it's been challenging for people experiencing homelessness. Leah Denbach, a while ago, who's does a lot of amazing photography work telling the stories of people experiencing homelessness, was saying, why people were rushing for toilet paper, people experiencing homelessness were looking for toilets, why people were complaining about staying at home, so many didn't have a home to stay in. I thought that was so powerful. We talked about heroes. I'm hoping that you could name some of your pandemic heroes that have done some inspiring work during COVID-19.
Well, Steph will know that I can go on at great length, and I'm sure you guys have a time limit on these things, so I'll be careful. But honestly, if I could name every staff member at Blue Door, if I could name every staff member working in the shelter, and I think about, just what I've seen my team pull off, in over the course of the pandemic, it's. We talk about pandemic heroes, but it's almost everyday heroes when going to work is almost an act of heroism, and they do it on a regular basis. I think about the people that have, gone to find folks and work in encampments and support them in a very dangerous circumstance. That old Mr. Rogers line, look for the helpers, right? And there's people that come to mind. One in particular, and again, there are many others. The risk of naming people is you leave people off, right? But there's a couple of people in particular that I want to recognize. One is Dr. Andrew Bond, who works at Intercity Health Associates in Toronto, and he's been like the medical director of the Toronto's response on homelessness. When the pandemic was first unfolding, late in January and February of 2020, he was the first one to recognize just how dangerous it was going to be and how awful it could be for the homeless system and people experiencing homelessness. And he was very, very quick to raise the alarm, and it was only because he raised the alarm that we had any idea that something bad was about to happen, right? And potentially catastrophic for people experiencing homelessness. And he very quickly, and even knowing that this thing is coming, knowing what to do about it, was the next big thing. So how the hell do you get ready for a pandemic across the country in homeless shelters and homeless systems? And he very quickly, with Intercity Health and some of his other colleagues, developed an outline of how to protect people experiencing homelessness. Stuff that's still on the website, the CNH3. And that was absolutely instrumental, because the public health system did not come to our rescue, right? The public health system for the longest time was so busy with everything else. People experiencing homelessness, homeless shelters, others were down the priority list. So it was up to us. The cavalry wasn't coming, right? And Dr. Bond made it, took that leadership role, raised the alarm, then gave us good advice on what it is we can do, and then made that help give communities a roadmap, right, and how to do social distancing, isolation, quarantine, those kinds of things in a homelessness context, and I think really helped this from being a crisis from becoming a catastrophe. And we still don't know how many people were infected or lost their lives, which is terrible to think about, and it still plays out. The other person I think about is Adam Vaughan and the federal government. And again, I refer to homelessness as the jurisdictional equivalent of a high school dance, because homelessness doesn't fit neatly in anybody's jurisdiction, and more often than not, you've got governments all standing around in the side staring at their feet, waiting for somebody else to make the first move. We didn't have to say much. We talked to Adam, talked to his colleagues in Ottawa, alerted them to the crisis, and over the course of the pandemic so far, not including the Rapid Housing Initiative, but they put over $500 million directly into homeless services. And without that money, the homeless system in most of the country would not have been able to respond as quickly as they did. And that paid for everything from PPE to helping vaccination to overflow shelters to quarantine facilities. And without that, again, a crisis could have easily turned into a catastrophe. There are many, many, many others, but those two folks top of my mind.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think of both of those, but when the pandemic snuck up on us in the system, it was a bit of a holy shit moment, because we are not set up to deal with that. We have overcrowding. Mm-hmm. Space is always at a premium. It was very, very dangerous. And wow, through the will of those two individuals you talked about and them moving quickly, and many, many others, there's many people that still were ill and died in this sector, but it could have been so much worse. I'm so proud of, in my region, New York region, even Blue Door, we had 2 outbreaks. I mean, it was incredible. Mm-hmm. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people throughout the GTA. Everyone really pulled together. And it just goes to show you how strong the sector is when we have that political will, when we have the resources, when we work together, what we can do. And Tim, you certainly are not standing around staring at your feet. You are the guy who brings his own cardboard to the dance and breaks it down. You're doing
if only
incredible.
You saw me at a high school dance, you'd know that wasn't true.
Listen, you're doing incredible work, you and the team, and I have the pleasure of always working with one of your colleagues on this podcast who's doing incredible work. She often says, after this, we'll have a bit of a lull and we'll be able to, and that never happens because there's so much to do.
She is an optimist, that's why.
and you know what, I'm glad you're doing it. Where can people go to find out more information about the great work you're doing?
Well, visit our snazzy website, caeh.ca, that Steph has been so great keeping together, and all the other sites that are connected to it. There's a lot of great stuff there.
For sure. And of course, conference.ch.ca
Conference.
To register, learn more about the video contest, and folks have an opportunity, chance to win some cash prizes, which is lovely. And so Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the show today.
Thanks, guys.
Well, it's always amazing to hear about all the stuff that you and Tim and the rest of the gang at CAH are doing. You are giving us that national voice. You are lobbying for so much. We're so grateful for it. The work that you do makes it easier for folks like us at Blue Door to do the work that we do on the ground. And so looking forward to this conference, and looking forward to seeing all the different pandemic heroes, because I know there's so many. Thanks for setting this up, Steph. It was a great podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're really excited for next week, and I'm really excited to share all the videos that have been coming in as well. I think it's going to be a nice moment to reflect, take a break, be inspired, and kind of celebrate how far everyone's come, because the work still continues, right? Absolutely. And maybe, just maybe, we will find one of those videos of Tim at that high school dance, either staring at his feet or breaking it down for us with his hat on sideways. We'll see. Way before the iPhone. That's the beauty of it, right? That's thankfully it was before that. So thanks everyone for joining us on another episode of On the Way Home. Steph, Tim, we'll see you next time.